Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 825 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. Has it been 5 years already since that day in the United States when very, very interesting things took place? that somebody doesn't want to acknowledge as being particularly interesting? Somebody, unfortunately, who we have to talk about today. But how time flies. How time flies. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. How is your mental health doing today, kids and cubs? Mine is doing well overall. I'm a little tired. I'm having a little bout with insomnia. It's been about 5 days. I did get more sleep yesterday, but unfortunately I got to bed just a little bit later than I had wanted. So again, a short night, not as short as the last 4 previous to it have been by a long shot, but still not as long as I wanted. However, you know, just I don't know, feeling a little foggy, I guess. I would say it, just not 100% as clear-headed as I normally am when I do the show. So shouldn't be a problem so long as I don't try to speak or read too quickly. Usually on days like this, I tend to trip over my tongue a little more than others. But in good spirits, however, again, especially considering the circumstances, oh boy, there's just too much damn news. That's what I will say. Oh my God. And just the Venezuela thing is just so dominating everything that it's just, let's put it this way, there's just so much content that it's impossible to follow it all. Especially, when you have a life, because yesterday we had a curling match and then it snowed, so we had to shovel. And then, you want to spend some quality time with the light of your heart. And then you have to prepare a show, of course. And, with things that we were mentioning yesterday about what's going on with the breakdown and all that kind of stuff. I took the time yesterday to watch Nate's most recent show, and man, there definitely is, at least from his perspective, a whole lot more to the story than I had thought. I had like everybody, everybody that's sort of in this circle, I guess, picked up on a couple of things along the way, but just you know, I, I didn't want how would I put it this way? I didn't really want to know what was going on, so I haven't been listening to any of the episodes that have been going on that deal with that. I just see them come into the podcast feed, and you know, read the title, read the description. It's like, nah, I don't want to know, and just skip it. But because everybody here in the damn fam was talking about it, I did check out Nate's show yesterday, and hi, uh, I hope everything is okay with him, and that he's handling all this, relatively well. That's a lot to be taking on, to have a lot thrown at you, and you know, uh, at least our experience with Nate is that he is very thorough, very rigorous, very ethical, um, just an all around great guy. Um, you know, I'm I'm just so sad that all of this is happening to everyone. Yeah, a lot of this is so unnecessary. But Nate, unfortunately, has had to take on even bigger fights before, and is still standing. Seems to be, at least from how he is handling things, not too adversely affected. So, yeah, we just um, wow, and wow, the whole show, right? Not just the stuff that sort of involves him either tangentially um, or all the activities in which his name is being is in other people's mouths. Let's put it that way. But just the rest of the content in that show. But what's going on in Alberta? Oh my God! I just we have disloyals among us. The whole Jeffrey Rath thing and going to the United States, and the concept of basically trading all your future resources in exchange for a high $500 billion line of credit, not just $500 billion, period. Give us $500 billion and we give you all our resources for a $500 billion line of credit. So give us a line of credit and you can take all our resources and we'll pay you back for that. What? It's, oh my God. But when we had heard that he had been traveling, and again, it seems that the reaching out in South America and maybe Latin America, and everybody was thinking, oh, Panama, it's definitely Panama because Danielle Smith vacations a lot in Panama. But it seems it might have a little something to do with Argentina as well, the nation to which Donald Trump administration managed to arrange about $40 billion in various loans and financial guarantees and stuff like that. Yeah. Uh, it seems that the people from the Alberta Prosperity Project, or at least leader, or as some would call it, the Alberta Perfidy Project, like to travel. And as Nate noted, during Alberta winters to places that are warm. Interesting. Okay. Uh, but and then the whole portion with Danielle Smith and that sort of staged interview with Spanky, the guy who led her Alberta and who chaired her Alberta Next panel rather unprofessionally, as in the process of doing it, the loaded questions and very uh, massaged questions, and Danielle Smith making some statements that anybody who has been following her track record over the past few years could not believe and might even make them ironically giggle. Uh, boy. Um, she is bending over backwards so far for that separatist move, and I'm surprised her spine hasn't snapped in half. That's all I will say. Oh my God. But anyway, it was a busy day yesterday. It was a big day. But yeah, uh, we're concerned for all our friends, and we wish them all the best, and hope that like I said, all of this just seems unnecessary. So hopefully, all of these things will be resolved quickly. That doesn't mean that Nate's fight, however, stops because I believe he's involved in a $6 million lawsuit uh, because of, well, basically, it seems that there's some people that don't like the way he is doing the work that he has taken on, and this is a long-standing lawsuit. Of course, we've talked about it on the show briefly before, but yeah, it's he's going through a lot. He's going through a lot, I have to say, and he's doing it with class and poise, and yeah, it's but it's a shame. It's a shame because um, I can't speak for Nate. I can only speak for me. But I mean, I'm doing this. Mr. Grizzly and I are doing this because we want to inform and provide more political and media literacy, and equip people to be able to sift through uh, well, basically wade through the zone that's being flooded with bullshit for all intents and purposes. Nate, of course, does more citizen journalism actually because he files FOIA requests and that's Freedom of Information requests. FOIA might be United States, maybe just can't remember if that's an American acronym or a Canadian acronym, but Freedom of Information requests, and does some digging. He did a lot to break the story about what was going on with AHS and all of that stuff. So that tends to attract attention because, I mean, if journalism is, you know, reporting unpopular things about popular people, then, you know, certain popular people who don't like unpopular things reported about them do have uh, recourses, um, legal and otherwise, that they can uh, invoke in order to either, I mean, and these things are there for necessary reasons in the cases where people are indeed being unscrupulous. You need these protections, but of course, um, systems can be misused, abused, or used in creative ways to obtain, um, to achieve other ends. And so it would appear that he has been on the receiving end potentially of that type of action. And that is a lot to go through. And none of us take on this work expecting. Um, we put expecting to have to take on that kind of fight, but knowing that it is indeed possible that it occurs. It's just that one hopes that if one uh, holds themselves to a high standard in terms of behaving ethically and admitting mistakes and issuing corrections on themselves when they get something wrong, and doing their best in a good faith way to bring the most accurate information possible. And then, the case of the breakdown, because they're doing actually news, checking and double checking and verifying and all that kind of stuff. That is enough. People might not like unpopular things being said, but you know, the conclusions are arrived at, or the questions being asked are arrived at with a good faith and rigorous, after a good faith and rigorous process. So, yeah, it's a sticky situation. It's a sticky situation. It's, you know, it becomes one of those things that you decide, are you going to fight, or, is it, I didn't ask for this. And then you sort of either bow out or just, drop the story. And I don't judge what anybody does either way, because everybody, you know, has to decide what battles that they're going to take on and what they're going to let into their lives and what they're not, and how many what resources they have at the time, not just financially but even emotionally and mentally, to be able to take on such a fight, because those are very long fights, very expensive fights. So just I just want to take the guy in my arms and give him a big old hug, because yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. All right. And we're having a slightly interesting tech day here at the Beaver Lodge. Um, just little tiny things, nothing major. But when we started this show today, the countdown went on at our end, and after about at about because we have a 30-second countdown, at about 24, your stream unexpectedly shut down. Oh, okay. So I tried pressing go live again, and fortunately it re-engaged, because I thought for a second I was going to have to go and reprogram everything. And then I came on the show and then noticed that under my name, uh, what I had switched the thing to today reverted back to the thing yesterday. And then, so, just little tiny things, and no big things, like, when I'm like coming on and all of a sudden I've got no sound and I can't figure out why. These were all very resolvable things, but it was like, okay, I got this one down. Here we go. No, okay, there's something else. I got this one. Nope, nope. Here we go. I felt like I just kept on. I was at the beginning of a 100-meter race, and on my first step, I step away. I just trip over my own foot. And it wasn't only the high tech; it was the low tech thing too. I couldn't even get the earrings in this morning. Normally, I just sit here and I pop them in. I couldn't find the hole. Title of my upcoming sex tape, by the way. I'm so sorry. Might be a little early for that. I had to go to the bathroom and actually need the mirror to find the holes to put the earrings in. So high tech, low tech, speed bump after speed bump. But we're here and we're doing fine. So hopefully all the speed bumps have gotten out of the way, and the rest of the show will just be smooth. Narrative voice, said he as he dreaded pressing the next button. All right, kids and cubs. Let's see. Yes, indeed. Kit Karen. Gremlins. Gremlins. And I have no idea, Kit. It's showing up here, Kit Karen Bast. If you are somebody I know, because YouTube had a policy on changing the names. So if I do know you, please let me know in the chat who you are, so I could refer to you as I know you. And if not, welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Pull up a log and sit down, stay a while. I hope you like what you find here. And you, kids and cubs, are already getting it on in the chat. And I like this. I like this very much so. Uh, Kit playing with 3D. I have too many tabs open. I keep exiting this one by accident. I think that might have. Uh, yeah, I think that might have been what happened to me yesterday when I disappeared from the screen for a second. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Let's. Oh, somebody is quoting the song "More" by Madonna, which always makes me very, very, very happy. It's one of my favorite songs to sing. I get very, very happy when I do that. I've actually never tried that one as an audition song. I should maybe do that, because I really get into that song, and maybe my performance factor when I sing it would land me a role. I have to put that in the old filing cabinet there. All right. Let's see, kids and cubs. You guys are definitely in the chat. I cannot read all of that quickly, so I'm going to have to save that for after the show as a little treat to myself. And there's a lot that happened over the past 24 hours or so, kids and cubs. Let's see. How do I want to start this? Do I want to start this with the big stuff or the smaller stuff? Let's do. You know what? Let's flip it up. Let's do some of the bigger stuff today first. Of course, right? We're talking about what's going on in Mexico, not Mexico. See, that's what I'm going to talk about that today, but Venezuela. And yesterday we went over things, and we looked at the prime minister's statement. We looked at Pierre Poilievre's statement. Talked about the entire conservative machine, the influencers, pundits, media plants, various MPs, and all singing from the songbook. And we looked at the prime minister's statement, we looked at Poilievre's statement, and noted that there was about 8 hours difference in those in the timing of those statements, with Poilievre being the first to rush out, basically in a fool's rush in kind of manner to try to um, do some preemptive framing to set the narrative by which we would all be discussing this issue in Canada. Failed miserably at that. The prime minister had his statement that came out 8 hours later. We could see from the quality of the statements that it was maybe a good idea to wait for just a little tiny bit. But and there were people that wanted to draw the contrast. Amazingly, from the conservative side of the ledger, uh, trying to gaslight people into believing that there was ever any galaxy, dimension, universe, planet, continent, country, area code, or postal code in which Pierre's take on the situation was superior to that of the prime minister's. Um, of course, that is just um, insane if one has any sense of logic or reason in any way, shape, or form. Um, but something else interesting happened yesterday. And, if you don't want to compare, because a lot of people don't, particularly on the conservative side, that which Pierre Poilievre said to Mark Carney, that liberal, Jean Charest issued a statement yesterday. That's just a small tweet, um, nothing major. But again, when you look at it, um, let's put it this way: you can compare what Pierre said to the prime minister, but if you're partisan and you say, well, no, then how about comparing him to what another conservative said? So Jean Charest had this to say: the military operation in Venezuela confirms the new U.S. national security strategy, particularly towards the Americas and therefore Canada. Though no one has any sympathy for Maduro, Canadians should be concerned that for President Trump, force is now a sufficient reason to impose his will on other countries. This operation demonstrates that it is imperative for Canada to reduce its economic and military dependence on the United States. Now, if that is indeed a statement by Mr. Charest himself, which I do believe because he had embedded a link to a Globe and Mail editorial in there. So I just wanted to, sometimes people take a quote from it, but there were no quotation marks on this. So I'm believing in this case that this directly is coming from him. It's two different statements. The quality of statement is very different between the two. And there is way much more very clear and obvious statesmanship in the comment by Mr. Charest than there was in any statement at all by Pierre Poilievre. So one can be a conservative and a statesman at the same time. But Pierre clearly chose not to, and Jean Charest showed us how that was indeed rather possible. And it didn't take him 7, 10, 12 paragraphs, just a couple of very considered, well timed words that recognize the complexity and the nuance of the situation. So there you have it. It is possible. It's just that Pierre is choosing not to at this point. Now, a lot of the complaints. Actually, you know what? I am going to read that Globe and Mail editorial. It's from the editorial board. It says, the Sunday editorial, Venezuela's fate is a warning for Canada. And this sort of gives some color and texture to as to why Pierre Poilievre's comments were extremely ill-advised. No one need shed a single tear for Nicolas Maduro, a ruthless dictator who extinguished Venezuela's democracy and set its economy into a death spiral. His sins are many: stolen elections, numerous alleged crimes against humanity, and more than a decade of exploitation of what was and should still be a prosperous country. And of course, the Trump administration alleges Mr. Maduro is a narco-terrorist in league with drug cartels. Mr. Maduro clung to power illegally. Canada and many other nations refused to recognize him as a legitimate head of state. It might be tempting then to welcome Saturday's military action by the United States to seize Mr. Maduro and his wife as justifiable means to the end of a despicable dictatorship. That temptation should be cast aside. U.S. President Donald Trump has no interest in restoring Venezuelan democracy or helping the people who have suffered the rule of Mr. Maduro or his predecessors from Hugo Chavez onward for much of the last 3 decades. Mr. Trump's intentions are always murky, clouded by bursts of bombast. But he said Saturday that he aims to, quote, run the country, at least temporarily, with Venezuela oil revenues paying for the costs. We're going to build the wall and Mexico will pay for it. We'll run Venezuela and their oil will pay for it. I'm having flashbacks. The path will be cleared for American oil producers to return to the country nearly 2 decades after their assets were confiscated. There will be reimbursement, Mr. Trump vowed. Plunder is the only word for it. So this is not a military action for democracy or international order or human rights or any of the rationales, sometimes thin, admittedly, that the United States has marshaled in past interventions. The motivation is simple and ancient. Empire. Saturday marked the formal debut of an imperial America led by a president who recognizes no law save that of the jungle. Already, Mr. Trump is turning his attention elsewhere, saying in an interview Saturday that, quote, something's going to have to be done with Mexico. Put a pin in that, because we'll get to that. Every country in the Western Hemisphere should be worried, particularly this country, which Mr. Trump so obviously covets as his 51st state. And they are putting out these big memes saying that this is our hemisphere. Which strikes me, if I was going to be extremely cynical and perhaps unkind, that the United States is under Trump, at least, is realizing that their position as the world's number one superpower is not going to last, and that probably would not last as China and India and all those other countries emerge and grow, and therefore is retreating from being the world's policeman, a job that it sought. And since we can't control the world, we won't be able to hold that and maintain that illusion. We'll just dominate the hemisphere, and that will be how we show our American exceptionalism henceforth. If one wanted to be cynical, one could look at the move to wanting to dominate the hemisphere rather than dominate the world as a sign of failure, perhaps. Ria, changing the deck chairs and changing the target, the objective in the middle of the game so as to not look like you're losing. No empire remains the number one empire forever, right? So, if the objective is to maintain the illusion of being the dominant force, and you can no longer take on the world, well, why not just pick an easier fight or an easier objective to attain? And then basically, why not use a sledgehammer to swat a fly and then claim incredible dominance and victory when a fly swatter would have done, of course. In fairness, Mr. Trump did make his intentions crystal clear with the publication in November of an updated national security strategy. It was nothing less than a blueprint for not just traditional U.S. dominance of the Western Hemisphere, but for overt control. The national security strategy was decidedly not, as some unwisely asserted, posturing for Mr. Trump's MAGA base. In it, the United States asserts, quote, a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine of the 1820s, which declared the Americas off limits to further European colonization. Mr. Trump's addendum is to assert that the United States will ensure that governments in the Western Hemisphere, quote, cooperate with us, meaning obedience and subservience, including, quote, continued access to key strategic locations. As we wrote last month, the vision laid out in the national security strategy represents a direct challenge to Canada's sovereignty and was so vividly demonstrated on Saturday morning. National sovereignty and international law are no barriers to enacting the Trump corollary. The United States may shortly be turning Venezuela into a de facto possession, running the country either directly or through a short-stringed local puppet. The Trump administration purports to be the inheritor of the 19th century American foreign policy that asserted U.S. control over the Western Hemisphere. In reality, Mr. Trump's actions have far older roots, stretching back to the Peloponnesian War, in which Athens battled Sparta for supremacy in the 5th century BCE. In that war, Athens told the island state of Melos to surrender or face annihilation. Thucydides, the Athenian general and historian, famously articulated the imperial arrogance of his city-state in his History of the Peloponnesian War. Athens, at least, did not make excuses in making its demands to Melos. The justification was simple. We do this because you cannot stop us. You know, as well as we do, that right, as the world goes, is the only question between equals in power, while the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must, Thucydides wrote. Trumpism has rarely been summed up so well. Might does not make right. It doesn't have to. There is no need for any such adornment on naked power. Ottawa's response to the U.S. military strike on Venezuela was, well, cautious is a generous description. In a post on X, Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada, quote, welcomes the opportunity for freedom, democracy, peace, and prosperity for the Venezuelan people, going on to call for all parties to respect international law. Those are laudable sentiments. They just don't bear much relation to current reality. But what really matters is not what Mr. Carney wrote on Saturday, but what he does today, tomorrow, and the next day. Any doubt that the United States intends to enforce the Trump corollary evaporated as the strikes on Venezuela began. It's true that Mr. Trump has forsworn the use of military force in the case of Canada, assuming for a moment that he keeps his word. There are myriad ways in which to use economic coercion to accomplish the goal of turning Canada into a de facto protectorate. The threats, tariffs, and rhetoric of the last 10 months provide all the proof that is needed. So, what is to be done? The start must be to recognize cold reality. Canada needs a continued partnership with the United States. And that is not in any doubt. The questions are, what will be the terms of that partnership, and will Canada bargain from a position of weakness or strength? The federal government must act on two fundamental issues to fortify its position in dealing with the Trump administration while understanding that Canada and the United States will remain intertwined. First, Ottawa must accelerate its push to reduce Canada's dependence on the U.S. economy. Every new export market reduces Mr. Trump's leverage. That was true before Saturday's military action. Now there is the prospect of increased heavy oil shipments from Venezuela into U.S. markets, which at a minimum will depress the selling price for Alberta bitumen. And oil prices, there's some oil company prices in Canada that took a hit yesterday as a result. I think it was a 7% drop in the prices, according to the CBC. I'll just take a look at that. This is Kyle Bax from the CBC. North American oil prices climbed by more than 1% on Monday following the upheaval in Venezuela over the weekend, while stock prices of some large Canadian oil and gas companies tumbled in early trading. A barrel of West Texas Intermediate, the North America benchmark, ended the day trading 1.7% higher, up about $1 to just over 58 cents US. Prices remain relatively cheap and are about $15 lower than compared to 1 year ago. Meanwhile, several Canadian oil and gas companies took a hit to their stock price. The Toronto Stock Exchange's energy index was down about 4.5% by midday Monday before recovering slightly at the end of the day, down at about 3.5%. Shares of the largest oil and gas companies in the country were lower in early trading, including Suncor Energy at about 4%, while Cenovus Energy and Canadian Natural Resources Limited dropped about 7% before recovering some of the losses later in the day. Venezuela produces a heavy crude which is similar to the type of oil that is mostly produced in Western Canada. Quote, everybody is worried about how Venezuela will be able to access its oil and natural gas production because they have significant amounts of oil reserves, especially similar to what Canada has, said Barry Schwartz, Chief Investment Officer at Baskin Wealth Management. Though stocks of Canadian energy companies are down, Schwartz said it's likely an overreaction, noting that it will likely take years to rebuild Venezuela's energy sector infrastructure before production could noticeably increase. And the time that it takes to do that is the time that we need to be nimble and really start diversifying. Quote, it's oil that has to be transported and refined. It's expensive stuff to get out of the ground, but you can see the longevity of those reserves and the value of them, he said. The weekend removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is impacting oil markets because the country has some of the largest oil reserves in the world or around the world. Once a major producer, Venezuela only pumped about 900,000 barrels per day out of the ground last year, following many years of declining investment because of sanctions and failed government policies. At its peak, Venezuela produced 3.7 million barrels per day in 1970. Overall, the Toronto Stock Exchange and North American markets all rose in value on Monday. So yeah, a little bit of impact on oil prices there yesterday. So oil stocks, I should say, more than oil prices. All right, back to the editorial. So it said here, going back to where we left off, I'll just reread that sentence. First, Ottawa must accelerate its push to reduce Canada's dependence on the U.S. economy. Every new export market reduces Mr. Trump's leverage. That was true before Saturday's military action. Now there is the prospect of increased heavy oil shipments from Venezuela into the U.S. market, which at a minimum will depress the selling price for Alberta bitumen. In that light, new oil pipelines to the Pacific coast is not merely desirable so long as a consensus can be eventually arrived at. It's a national imperative. And Danielle Smith finally said something, and basically that's what she said. Oh well, this is just all more reason to make sure that we get that pipeline, because she has a one-track mind, of course. But that's how she chose to frame it. But she didn't take any position, it seems, on the action itself. Second, the defense of Canada's sovereignty can no longer be outsourced to the United States. The government needs to lay out a roadmap to rebuilding Canada's military capacity with particular attention on Arctic defense. If Canada continues to leave a vacuum, the Americans will fill it, and they will stay eroding and eventually displacing Canadian control of the Arctic. And one has to wonder because the United States in particular wants to consider the Northern Passage international waters, whether Canada, even though they have Alaska, of course, they need a route. Nate Pike made that observation on his show that, if Alberta becomes the 51st state, then the United States might have better access to the Arctic. Of course, there's the whole Northwest Territories between Alberta and the Arctic, but yeah, okay. And then they talked about building a pipeline to the West Coast, but down through the United States and through the West Coast of the United States, which doesn't solve Canada's problem of basically, if you have to ship the oil through the United States, I'm sure that there's going to be a fee for that. I'm sure you're not going to get to keep 100% of your profits there. You might have to share those. So yeah, it's interesting. Some of the solutions or things that some people in that movement appear to be considering. it would be interesting if in Canada's um, bid to move its defense spending to 5%, if Canada um, decided that it was going to deal more with European nations and do things like uh, install its own sensors or maybe low orbit satellites for monitoring things that are going on in the north and informing the United States. Hi, yeah, we understand that the same kind of deal we had with NORAD is maybe the same type of deal that you guys had in mind for maritime activity up in the north, but yeah, those waters are strictly Canadian waters, and we are going to do our own monitoring of that. So if anything is coming from Russia or something like that, the first call is going to come to Ottawa, not Washington D.C., because and the part that we won't say out loud, of course, because we don't want to target, but the part that we all know and that we're whispering to ourselves is that because we don't actually trust you, the United States, if something should happen and the call comes to Washington first, that you will put or consider our interests to at least be equal to yours. We do no longer have confidence that you won't sacrifice a part of the North or maybe a Canadian city in order to protect yourselves. So we are going to do things a little differently. We're going to deal with our European partners and use that money and spend it in Canada to develop our own systems for monitoring what happens there. And yeah, if there is something, and we understand that hypersonic missiles travel very fast and that every second, every minute counts. But the first phone call is going to come to Ottawa, and we'll decide whether or not we want to call you and get your input. That would have a lot of people freaking out if we made that type of decision. And we also have that decision about those F-35s coming up. Recent developments in Venezuela and that national security strategy sure would factor in to my assessment as to whether or not the F-35 is still the best plane for us, or whether or not we, again, should be looking to other potential partners. We are in a situation now where we have to pretty much um, no longer count on the fact that the United States will be there to defend us should something happen. Yes, we have some interoperable equipment for joint missions that we're all going to do together, but we also have another set of equipment in case we need to defend our own border here on the continent for some reason. Things that are not interoperable with United States, things for which we keep the code in terms of updates and patches and all that kind of stuff. Um, a, a little more sovereignty here. Um, that would definitely create some issues, and it could create also um, lots of howls from the U.S. defense industry because I mean, the assumption is always that well, Canada doesn't have a lot of money and they'll just buy the off the shelf stuff from us. And what choice do they have really? If we start exercising choice, making different choices that don't necessarily include them or say thank you, but we will not. Um, uh, Thank you so much for your offer for this thing that's all ready and ready to go and that we can just take and plug and play and go, but yeah, that's not going to work for us anymore. We are very content to spend more money um, to do it in such a way that we get to control our own code. But thank you. And we might interoperability is no longer our primary um, concern when we're buying defense equipment. Oh, we will spend that 5% like you asked us to. We're just not going to spend it in the way that you thought we were. And we are not going to buy the stuff that you have prepackaged and are telling us is good. That could shake up a lot of things and could create an incredible amount of pressure from the inside to change the dynamics. It would be sort of like sitting at the international poker table at which everybody's cheating. Thank you again, Belle of the Ranch and Beau of the Fifth Column for that quote. And the United States would be saying, yes, 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 I raise you total imperialism. And Canada comes back and I raise you the one of the largest oil reserves in the world, Canada. Take that. And then Canada just very calmly turns around and says, oh, okay, yes, yes. Well, I see you, and I raise you control of the Northern Passage. And oh, by the way, there's a time release bomb in your defense industry that's about to go off. You might want to check on that. Now, of course, that would engender some type of retaliation from the United States, of course, that we would have to be ready for if that were to occur. But there might be some increasing assertions of sovereignty coming from our side. Of course, they're going to have to be done, again, not big, bold statements, right, with big press conference and, ha, take that, the United States. But some of these things might be happening soon behind the scenes. The Americans are not really leaving us any choice. Let's get back to that. So I'll read that bit again. Second, the defense of Canada's sovereignty can no longer be outsourced to the United States. The government needs to lay out a roadmap to rebuilding Canada's military capacity with particular attention on Arctic defense. If Canada continues to leave a vacuum, the Americans will fill it, and they will stay eroding and eventually displacing Canadian control of the Arctic. The point of those measures is not to antagonize Mr. Trump or to indulge some fantasy of a challenge to U.S. economic or military power. No, the point is to simply recognize reality. Mr. Trump respects one thing, power, and takes full advantage of any hint of weakness. The citizens of Melos failed to reach an accommodation with Athens when such a deal would have had acceptable costs. The results of their disdain and delay were disastrous. Canada cannot repeat the mistake of failing to come to grips with reality urgently or failing to recognize that we are now caught up in a national emergency. A very well written piece by the Globe editorial board here. Wow. Like Tavichi, I have to interrupt this for this one. While I congratulate Freeland on her career, I gotta say she has her gift for really crappy timing. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to that later today, but I just saw that across the screen, and by the time I get to Freeland, it would have been gone. So I just wanted to pop it up there to make sure we got that, because that's a well placed statement. That's a fair observation, Kit Tabby. Very fair. Oh man, jeez. Okay, so Mexico. Mexico had a different reaction to official reaction to what we had, and we'll take a look at that a little bit and give you because how would I put it? Yeah, let's just look at Mexico's what Mexico did, and we'll have a little discussion about the choices that Mark Carney made and the choices that Mexico made, and what has happened since. So this here is according to, I'm just going to bring this up here. The Toronto Star, I believe it is. Oh, maybe. Hold on. I'll see if it's. It might not be the one I was looking for here. I have it on my phone, I believe, because I made sure to highlight it this morning so that I could bring it to you. Let's take a look. I'm so sorry. Nope, neither. It's not there either. Okay, I'm gonna have to look for it the old-fashioned way. I thought I had set it aside this morning, but clearly I had not. But basically, Mexico had issued a denunciation, whereas we did not. Right? We welcomed the opportunity for more democracy without making a comment about how that opportunity came about. But Mexico chose a different path. Here it is, and this is the one exactly I was looking for. This is by Tonda McCharles. America's arrest and capture of Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro and his wife drew sharper condemnation from Mexico and a pair of federal liberals who went further than Prime Minister Mark Carney to denounce Donald Trump's action as an unacceptable violation of international law. As Trump ramped up his own rhetoric to paint Colombia and Cuba as other states with failed leadership and to muse about Denmark's ability to secure Greenland, Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum denounced the U.S. military action in Venezuela and called on Trump to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other nations. Quote, "We categorically reject intervention in the internal affairs of other countries," Sheinbaum said. Unilateral action and invasion cannot be the basis for international relations in the 21st century. They lead neither to peace nor to development, Sheinbaum said in a strongly worded three-page declaration Monday. Sheinbaum referenced past U.S. presidential greats George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and dismissed Trump's assertion in his America First doctrine and the right to dominate the hemisphere in the name of U.S. national security. Quote, "Mexico firmly maintains that the Americans do not belong to any doctrine or power. The American continent," sorry, I read that incorrectly. "Mexico firmly maintains that the Americas don't belong to any doctrine or power. The American continent belongs to the peoples of each of the countries that comprise it," Sheinbaum said, outlining all the ways Mexico is working with the U.S. to curb narcotics and weapons trafficking. Quote, "Cooperation, yes. Subordination and intervention, no." A statement very similar to what the Premier of Denmark had mentioned, and also the Prime Minister of Denmark later on. The Premier of Greenland and the Prime Minister of Denmark had then mentioned later on. "Cooperation, yes. Subordination and intervention, no," said Sheinbaum, a leader whom Trump has previously counted as an ally in his so-called war on fentanyl. Similarly, Liberal MP Marcus Pawlowski, in an op-ed co-written with retired Liberal MP John McKay, a former chair of the Canada-US Parliamentary Group, warned that while Trump's intervention unseated an authoritarian ruler, it nevertheless carries, quote, "consequences that are cause for alarm, not celebration, because it will embolden authoritarian rulers in Russia and China." Indeed. Theo Moudakis had a wonderful cartoon about that issue in that potential path that seems to be opening up. And hopefully I will find it and be able to bring it to you there. McKay, a former chair of the Commons Defense Committee at Pawlowski, a doctor and lawyer who once worked for the World Health Organization, wrote, quote, "Unilateral military action by one state and against another, whether justified by historical grievance, border dispute, or even well-motivated compassion for population suffering under brutal regimes, fundamentally undermines the international legal order which has preserved global peace for 8 decades. Even if that system needs reform," they argued that the answer, quote, "is not invasion on the basis of bogus, trumped-up, pun intended, claims of a narco-state, followed by the installation of a compliant puppet government. Those precedents are precisely what Russia's Vladimir Putin dreams of as he eyes Ukraine and the Baltic states, and others," they wrote. "The U.S. extraterritorial pursuit of Maduro will fuel, quote, a massive infusion of anti-American sentiment across South America and raises new questions about the prospect of a U.S. incursion into Denmark's territory to control Greenland. The implications for NATO partners and warns that long-dormant disputes over Canada's Arctic sovereignty could erupt again," wrote McKay and Pawlowski. Indeed, Trump on Sunday asserted that America would need to secure its own interests anywhere in the hemisphere and said, "We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it. I can tell you, to boost up security in Greenland, they added one more dog sled." They added one more dog sled. Really? Actually, if one wanted to be a little more accurate, according to ED News, Denmark plans to spend roughly 27.4 billion Danish kroner, which is about 4.26 billion. It doesn't say what currency it's converting it to, so I will assume American, in an effort to shore up its defense capabilities in the Arctic and stave off threats made by United States President Donald Trump against the Danish semi-autonomous Greenland. The massive cash injection in defense will cover the purchase of 2 additional Arctic vessels, a new Arctic Command headquarters, a North Atlantic undersea cable, and maritime patrol aircraft, the Danish Ministry of Defense said Friday. Denmark's military also plans to acquire 16 additional F-35 advanced fighter jets, bringing its total fleet to 43, and a move that Chief of Defense Michael Hildegard calls an assertion of sovereignty. The new jets, he added, will significantly boost the combat power, flexibility, and Danish contribution to NATO. Last month, Denmark made its largest ever arms purchase of European-made air defense systems worth 58 billion Danish kroner, or $9.2 billion US dollars, and separately announced a paradigm shift to acquire for the first time long-range missiles in an effort to deter Russia. Donald Trump calls this a dog sled. Okay, if that's what you wish to... it's always reduction and mocking, right? And dismissiveness. But it's not just one more dog sled. It's not just one more dog sled. All right. Indeed, Trump on Sunday asserted that America would need to secure its own interests anywhere in the hemisphere and said, we need Greenland from the standpoint of... Oh, sorry, I read that already. Speaking to the Star, Pawlowski said he felt, quote, morally obligated to speak up on behalf of my constituents to support the international legal order, adding that many in his Thunder Bay Rainy River riding fought to defend that system during wars that later gave rise to the UN Charter. Former Canadian ambassador to the UN, Bob Ray, said in a CBC interview that Trump's declaration that he has the right to act unilaterally within the hemisphere is clear overreach and nonsensical. Quote, what the hell is this? You can't unilaterally declare that you have unique jurisdiction over an entire half of the world, and all the people who live in that half of the world just have to put up or shut up, Ray said. He said Canada had to stake out a clear position and added now that he is no longer a diplomat because he has now officially stepped aside in his role as the U.S. Permanent Representative to the... Is it Permanent Representative to the United Nations? Because I know it's not ambassador. Mr. Maybe Kit Bucky can confirm that in the chat. So yeah, he said Canada had to stake out a clear position and added now that he is no longer a diplomat, he can tell Trump's action the way he sees it, and said, quote, this emperor has no clothes. Carney, who arrived late Monday in Paris, issued over the weekend a carefully worded statement in response to Trump's capture of Maduro that avoided direct criticism of the U.S. president's action. It underscored Canada's longstanding opposition to the illegitimate regime of Maduro since it stole the 2018 election, and said the Canadian government therefore welcomes the opportunity for freedom, democracy, peace, and prosperity for the Venezuelan people. Carney emphasized the need for a, quote, peaceful, negotiated, and Venezuelan-led transition process that respects the democratic will of the Venezuelan people. Quote, in keeping with our longstanding commitment to upholding the rule of law, sovereignty, and human rights, Canada calls on all parties to respect international law. We stand by the Venezuelan people's sovereign right to decide and build their own future in a peaceful and democratic society, Carney said. Carney is to attend Tuesday's meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, European leaders invested in Ukraine's war effort to resist Russia's invasion, to be hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith suggested the U.S. decision to have American companies can't, quote, run Venezuela oil operations carries implications for Canada's energy industry. In a statement on Twitter, Smith said, quote, the recent events around Maduro's arrest serve to emphasize the importance of expediting the development of, quote, pipelines to diversify our oil export markets, including a new, quote, Indigenous co-owned bitumen pipeline to BC's northwest coast to reach Asian markets. Alberta continues work on an upcoming pipeline application and, quote, expects the federal government to move forward with urgency on it. Smith said, adding her government, quote, supports building pipelines in all directions and will work with provincial and federal partners, without referring to BC Premier David Evy's opposition to any proposal that would track a new pipeline route across northern BC. I do not know why Danielle Smith still, after what happens in Venezuela, is saying pipelines in all directions, because the one direction we absolutely should not be sending anything is south anymore. But there she goes. One track mind, everything is just pipeline, 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 pipeline. She's not wrong in that if we do want to move our bitumen, this situation here, if we're going to lose access to some markets in about 5-6 years or so, then it might be a good idea to get on it. That is, that you can make a legitimate argument for that. But if she's still talking about building pipelines south, clearly this is not a considered position in which she's taking on new facts and has decided to alter based on the new facts. She's basically saying the same things as she's always said. It's just that it's more important to be done. But again, Premier Smith, you should probably not be saying pipelines in all directions anymore. That should not be an objective at this point. Not in all directions. Not anymore. So yeah, Mexico denounced, and then you had a situation where Donald Trump comes out and says, we need to do something about Mexico. Okay. It's not only Mexico, right? I mean, according to Trump, Colombia is run by a sick man and Cuba is ready to fall and Mexico has to get their act together. Wow, we need Greenland. Surprisingly, he hasn't been saying that much about Canada. So that's a question I wondered yesterday about whether or not it's worth it to come out and make this big statement and spike the football and punch Trump directly in the face, doing assuaging everybody that wants us to take the moral stand publicly and make it very abundantly clear that we denounce this. Again, we've had a couple of experiences when it comes to the United States of taking a very visible stand so that the world can see. Well, not only did the world not follow us, but there were consequences as a result of this. Well, according to Politico, Megan Messerly, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is dismissing talk of a U.S. invasion of her country. Let me repeat that right. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is dismissing talk of a U.S. invasion of her country. Privately, some Mexican officials and business leaders are concerned that President Donald Trump's threats may soon become reality. A worst-case scenario, some fear, is a U.S. strike that results in civilian casualties and throws the country into political and economic chaos. Trump's rhetoric, including his suggestion over the weekend that Washington may have to, quote, do something about cartels that are, quote, running Mexico, is reviving fears in Mexico City that the United States may act unilaterally against Mexico, particularly after the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro on Saturday. Mexico should indeed be concerned, and Mexico is going to have to thread that needle very carefully, said Arturo Sarucan, Mexico's ambassador to the U.S. during the George W. Bush and Obama administrations. Quote, I don't think it's likely that there will be a unilateral use of force by the U.S. on Mexican soil, but does that mean it won't happen? Absolutely not. The concerns have grown even as bilateral relations Let's try that again. The concerns have grown even as bilateral relations are at a high water mark, driven in part by close cooperation on border security and Trump's warm words for Sheinbaum, who he called, quote, a terrific person as recently as Sunday. But despite the public assurances from Scheinbaum and Trump's apparent affection for her leadership, business leaders reliant on peace and stability are increasingly anxious. They worry about the Trump administration's hostile posture as it treats drug trafficking and border security as core national security threats that can be tackled with military force. Quote, setting aside personal judgments about what happened in Venezuela, this action increases concerns about the potential for unilateral action against Mexican cartels, said Pedro Casas Alatriste, CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce in Mexico. Another Mexican business official granted anonymity to speak candidly about the situation between the two countries, said the initial reaction in Mexico was, they literally pulled the Venezuelan president out of his bed and now he's in New York City. My God, that could be us. And there are people in Canada calling for that to happen to our current prime minister. Yeah. People that declared themselves patriots when they either blocked the border in Coots or were marching, were shutting down the downtown of Ottawa. Such patriots now calling for the same thing to happen to our current prime minister. Mm. Oh, yeah. And by the way, another thing we learned on Nate's show yesterday, um, we knew that we hadn't reported it on this show yet, but Alberta's Minister of the Environment, Rebecca Schultz, has announced that she would not she'd be stepping down sometime in May, which raised speculation of Alberta planning to go to an early election, something Danielle Smith and everybody around her denies is the plan at the moment. But she did step down, and the person who is replacing her as environment minister is someone who gained some notoriety being at the Coots blockade. Make of that what you will. All right. Geez. Publicly, Scheinbaum's government has responded to the action in Venezuela by leaning hard on international law and de-escalation. In a statement, her government condemned the use of unilateral force and warned that military action carried out without a collective or mutual framework would violate international law and risk regional instability. Behind the scenes, Mexican officials have paired that message with an aggressive and ongoing effort to cooperate with Washington, particularly on counter-narcotics operations and border security, in hopes of removing any justification for U.S. action. It's not going to matter. Over the last year, Mexico has, at Trump's behest, sent thousands of troops to the border, transferred dozens of high-level drug traffickers to the U.S. custody, and allowed expanded U.S. surveillance flights over Mexican territory. Scheinbaum's statement, quote, isn't made to escalate things bilaterally, said one Mexican official granted anonymity to speak candidly about the country's strategy. Scheinbaum has also been clear that Mexico can maintain dialogue and cooperation with partners while holding a firm autonomous position grounded in international law. White House spokesperson Anna Kelly said Trump, quote, has many options to protect Americans from drug trafficking. Quote, the administration is reasserting and enforcing the Monroe Doctrine to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere, control immigration, and stop drug trafficking, Kelly said. The possibility of U.S. action comes at a pivotal time for the U.S.-Mexico relationship, which faces a series of high-stakes tests in the coming months. The U.S. and Mexico, along with North American neighbor Canada, are preparing to jointly host the 2026 World Cup, and the three countries must decide this year whether to extend a free trade agreement that covers trillions of dollars in commerce, as the Trump administration stares down affordability concerns heading into the midterm elections. Together, they raise the potential costs of any U.S. move in Mexico carried out without Scheinbaum's authorization. The U.S. needs Mexico on trade, the U.S. needs Mexico on migration, and the U.S. needs Mexico on going after the criminal groups. The reverse is also true, said Luis de la Calle, former Undersecretary of International Business Negotiations at the Ministry of Economy in Mexico and former Minister of Trade Issues at the Mexican Embassy in Washington. Quote, in the end, Mexico and the U.S. have huge incentives to cooperate between the two of us. Mexico also presents a fundamentally different scenario than Venezuela, one in which targeting drug cartels, not regime change, is the goal. Polling within Mexico has shown at least some support for U.S. intervention to fight cartels, which remain overwhelmingly unpopular. Quote, there is huge popular frustration across the entire region with crime, and if the United States kills somebody who is a known cartel figure, then I think there may be some popular support for that, said Ricardo Zuniga, who served as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs at the State Department during the Biden administration. Oh, that's a mouthful. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for State of West Hemisphere Affairs. Whether Mexico has a role in that, it's in their interest to be seen as having had agency in that. Those differences, coupled with the importance of the relationship with the US, help explain why Sheinbaum has been careful in her public response. Rather than directly pushing back on Trump, she has emphasized cooperation between the two countries and addressing, quote, root causes of drug trafficking and other issues. Quote, in recent months, we have established an understanding with the United States based on four principles: respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, shared but differentiated responsibility, mutual respect and trust, and cooperation without subordination, Sheinbaum said Monday at her daily press conference. But that strategy may be hard for Sheinbaum to sustain. Already, the action in Venezuela has emboldened critics on the left side of Sheinbaum's party, Morena, who argue Mexico should take a tougher line against Trump. A U.S. strike in said Mexico would only embolden hardliners within Morena, said Jeronimo Guterres, who served as Mexico's ambassador in Washington during Trump's first 2 years. There are people within Morena that would love to really pick a fight with the United States or have Sheinbaum pick a fight. Gee, sound familiar? At the same time, officials and analysts say the Venezuela episode has reinforced a broader position inside the Trump administration, one that increasingly treats narco trafficking, migration, and border security as national security threats rather than law enforcement challenges, and frames the Western Hemisphere as a central theater for defending the homeland. I honestly think that we're on this course regardless of what happened in Venezuela, said Alex Gray, who served as National Security Council Chief of Staff and Deputy Assistant to the President during Trump's first term. Quote, the president said in the 2025 national security strategy that defense of the homeland is the number one priority, and he's tying that to hemispheric defense as this logical progression. What is a direct threat to the homeland? Narco trafficking, fentanyl, and all of that. So yeah. Probably not a bad idea for Canada to have taken the position of neither condemning nor supporting the intervention, just celebrating the opportunity for more democracy, not even celebrating, noting the opportunity for more democracy in Venezuela, and allowing itself time and space without any additional threat in order to shore ourselves up. Okay. I think that's probably all I have on this front for now. This is a story that's going to keep on and on and on and on for the next few days. So, days, weeks, months, even. So, we don't necessarily have to try and fit everything in today. But yeah, just, Danielle Smith has her position now. We see what conservative statesmanship could look like if we actually had a serious leader at the Conservative Party of Canada. We're seeing that our more cautiously worded intervention has not attracted negative attention to us from the United States. We have enough of it. Thank you. We've seen how taking that type of stance has attracted negative attention to other states, thus perhaps confirming that Prime Minister Carney made the correct choice in issuing a statement that played the long game. And we can see here that it doesn't matter whether or not it's Canada or Mexico, politically, there is a faction in each country demanding, for domestic political reasons, of course, that the leader of their country make a public event of either standing up to Trump, punching him in the face, denouncing these types of actions, all moves which could be emotionally satisfying and cathartic for a few seconds, but would come with some potentially severe consequences. And again, then again, as I mentioned yesterday, you get into the debate about whether or not you are then a good person who says nothing, or whether or not you are making decisions that allow you to live to fight another day, for all intents and purposes. All right. Other news that we mentioned yesterday very briefly was that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, had basically announced that he had selected Christian Freeland to become an economic advisor to Ukraine because there's a lot going on. It needs to shore itself up. Ukraine has been making a lot of changes to who represents them and speaks for them in its government because there were a couple of things going on that were giving the impression that uh, that weren't, let's just say, that weren't necessarily helpful to President Zelensky in terms of attracting or maintaining international the image that the country needs to maintain internationally as a country that would be responsible with whatever donations are being granted here, and so tightening up the ship at his end, um, but is obviously looking for some help in terms of orienting the Ukrainian economy to maintain this fight if this is going to be a protracted war, and of course to plan for the future when the day where the war ends and they do need to rebuild. Um, he could not have picked a better person probably on the entire planet for this particular position, given her particular set of skills, her knowledge. She was also probably behind the scenes the person that coordinated most of the global action in terms of sanctions against Russia at the beginning of all of this. Canada and Ukraine are great friends, long-standing friends. She actually speaks the language. She speaks both Ukrainian and Russian, so nothing gets lost in translation for her. A great economic mind in that sense, right? There is nothing bad about this decision where it comes for when it comes to Ukraine's part of it. Where, however, yesterday there seemed to be Operation Get Freeland. Conservatives were really on it. Surprisingly, so were the NDP. And it's not entirely illegitimate, but there was something missing there. It really struck me as I call it misogyny masquerading as ethics. Christian Freeland, um, because of how successful she is and how successful she was in her role, um, basically was very disliked by a lot of people. Um, when we were doing coverage earlier and we were talking about hate mail and threats and all that kind of stuff, and we were talking about the extraordinary amount of number of threats that were directed particularly to female members of parliament. Christian Freeland, of all of that, was a recipient of the overwhelming majority unto herself of all of that hate and vitriol. Um, And yesterday, there seemed to be a large scale conservative campaign, again, aided and abetted by the NDP here, to denounce the move or to denounce Freeland personally and demanding her immediate resignation because how can you be an economic advisor for another country and still be an MP here and not be in some inherent conflict of interest and rah, 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 like this. And yes, there is a point about that. Um, and it was an onslaught. I mean, it was definitely the order of the day. If you're looking on social media, all the conservative accounts were just all of them drumbeat, 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 drumbeat. Got to get her out. Got to get her out. Got to get her out. She's got to go. She's got to go. She's got to go now. She's got to go now. I didn't hear I didn't hear immediate resignation. She's got to go. She's got to go. She's got to go. When and I'm sitting here and I'm watching this happen, and I'm thinking, yeah, of course, it probably is a bad uh, thing, or not a great thing, to ethically speaking, to have a position where you're advising another nation while you are an elected representative in in another. Not that that probably was not going on somewhat when we were organizing all of those sanctions, right? But But this is more direct because she's been literally, tapped on the shoulder by President Zelensky. So I'm looking at this here. I'm just going to give you a little sampling here of what was out there. This is Don Davies, the interim leader of the NDP. While I respect Ms. Freeland, one cannot serve Canada and another country at the same time. Taxpayers should not be paying for an absent MP, especially one working for a foreign government. She must resign as MP immediately. If Canada should not be paying for an absent MP, I'm wondering where Don Davies' equivalent statement for Matt Genereux is. But yeah, okay. Anyway. Number 2, John Rustad, former leader of the BC Conservatives. This should concern every Canadian. A sitting member of Parliament is now advising a foreign president traveling internationally in that role and continuing to vote in the House of Commons as a Liberal Ottawa under Mark Carney. Blah, 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 blah. Notice the tense, a sitting member of Parliament is now advising a foreign president. Is she now advising the former president, or was it just announced that she is going to be advising a foreign president traveling internationally in that role? Is she? Has she already started traveling internationally in her role as an economic advisor and continuing to vote in the House of Commons, which is not in session? Not a particularly honest representation there. Robin Urbach. What's a Canadian MP doing as an advisor to a foreign government? Chrysler Freeland must resign. Lisa McLeod. You spelled I am resigning effective immediately wrong. So even after Chrysler Freeland announces that she will be stepping down. And of course, Lisa McLeod attacking another woman. Problem is that in all of this concern for ethics and not being in conflict of interest, none of these people have asked what seems to us a very obvious and important question, which is, when is your start date? Recently, it was announced that she was going to be leading the scholarship fund for the Rhodes Scholarships. Nobody said that she needed to resign immediately because she had received a job offer that will probably be taking her to London in the UK. No, nobody said that, but Zelensky says, okay, I'm asking you to do this. It's an unpaid position, just like her job in terms of the envoy was part of the parliamentary secretary thing. She'll be stepping down from that as well as the Canadian envoy for Ukraine reconstruction. But yes, the announcement was made. But as far as we're concerned here, it seems that she does not need to do a damn thing until the first day she's actually on the job as the economic advisor. Now, the economic advisor is probably not going to be something that's like a 40-hour a week job, 5 days a week. It's probably going to be something where she comes in now and then and offers some advice, participates on some phone calls and stuff like that. It's not going to be a full-time position in that sense. Right? A lot of these advisors are people that come in situationally and as needed to provide, or you can pick up a phone and call and have a chat and get some insights. But it's not like she's going to be going into there's going to be an office somewhere in the Ukrainian legislative buildings, with her name on the door with a plaque and economic advisor to the, and that's going to be her job. She's going to be running the Rhodes Scholar thing. A lot of people, when they get into these high-level positions, have what their job is, and then they sit on a board there, and then they chair an economic council there, and they're an advisor here, and they cobble a whole bunch of stuff together. So, yes, she cannot do both jobs at the same time, but there's nothing indicating that she's actually started that job of providing economic advice. She's got a lot to do, right? Number one, she's probably preparing a move to an entire other nation in order to take on her other job. She has kids, she has family, she needs time to prepare that. It's not like I ask you to be. I now dub thee the economic advisor to Ukraine. Poof, and instantly you are on the job. There might be some lead time there. So this push, again, to frame her and paint her as unethical and trying to get her to go now. She's got to go now. Now. Y'all need to calm down a little. Y'all need to calm down. You have a point. You can't have both jobs at the same time. You can't. But maybe we can wait until she actually starts the job before, trying to raise a whole public ire against someone who has served the country relatively well. It's just, the level of just the pylon was really just ridiculous. Chrystia Freeland, of course, announced, Ukraine is at the forefront of today's global fight for democracy, and I welcome this chance to contribute on an unpaid basis as an economic advisor to President Zelensky. In accepting this voluntary position, I will be stepping aside from my role as the Prime Minister's special representative for the reconstruction of Ukraine. In the coming weeks, I will also leave my seat in Parliament. I want to thank my constituents for their years of confidence in me. I'm so grateful to have been your representative. Yes. Again, if all these people complaining, you should not work for two states for weeks. It's not right. None of these people have asked. I said, congratulations. When do you start? And then made their assessments. The start date matters here. Linda M. They're mad because they made her out to be such a terrible finance minister, and now a respectable country goes and signs her on for financial advice. Yes. Gee, what an insult to our nation. Oh, man. Jeez. Ugh. So, again, brouhaha, lots of running around with your hair on fire. Pretty much all for nothing. So the only thing I can imagine is going on here is that there was an opportunity to change the channel for a day and to punch down on liberals. And somebody we don't really like anyway, is has something good happening to them. So let's just punch down on her. And let's get everybody in. The internet was loaded with this yesterday. She doesn't deserve that. Not after everything she's done for the nation. She doesn't deserve that. There could be a little class with her on the way out. So, did anybody ever expect that Chrystia Freeland was not going to resign in order to take this on? Like, come on. But it's like this fetish for instant reaction. Instant, like Trump did it. Why aren't you punching him in the face right now? You just got offered a new job. Why aren't you resigning now? It's like, right? This breathlessness and wanting to paint everyone as being weak or corrupt or unethical or criminal. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And there's no need for it. There's just no need for it in any way, shape, or form. I lied about not wanting to talk a little bit about Venezuela. There is two other things. One other thing that happened that I wanted to mention because it's just weird. But you remember when Pierre Poilievre said that Trump should be um, um, bringing in Edmundo Gonzalez to be the leader, uh, and that the lady who is now sitting as the opposition leader, who had won um, the Nobel Peace Prize. I can't never remember her name uh, off the top of my head. Machado, I think, or Corina Machado, I think it is. Um, I'll have to draw that up again. Machado is her last name. María Corina Machado. Close. I almost had it. Um, Yesterday, we noted, right? Um, Pierre was calling for her, to be heavily involved in that, and we saw that call on his lasted about 5 hours before Trump had already shot that down, saying that um, whatever, she wasn't good enough or whatever enough. She tried to curry favor with Donald Trump afterwards, and there's a tweet on Twitter named Nora Larito that says who tweeted, "The reboot of Veep is too sad to watch," and well, it seems that in order to do that, to gain Trump's affection, the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado dedicated her Nobel Peace Prize to Trump. I'm sorry, but please respect yourself. Why? I understand that Trump really wants Nobel Peace Prize. I understand it, I guess, and yeah, Daddy, you. Why would you do that? I mean, the people at the Nobel Committee must have their face in their hands right now, just like, oh God. She dedicated her Peace Prize to Trump. Yeah. Oh man, get up off your belly. Get up off your belly. That's not a good position to be in. But yeah, and well, it turns out it was for nothing, because, um, well, there's a new interim leader in Venezuela, at least interim for now, who's named Delcy Rodriguez. This is according to the Associated Press. Delcy Rodríguez, at least for now, has taken over as leader of Venezuela after her ally Nicolás Maduro was captured by the United States in a military operation and flown to New York City to face a criminal indictment. On Saturday, Venezuela High Court ordered Rodríguez to assume the role of interim president as the leader was backed by Venezuela's military. She was sworn in on Monday. Quote, "I come with sorrow for the suffering inflicted upon the Venezuelan people following an illegitimate military aggression against our homeland," she said with her right hand raised. "I come with sorrow for the kidnapping of two heroes." Uh, Rodriguez has served as Maduro's vice president since 2018. I'm just reading the quote. I'm just reading the quote, kids and cubs. Rodriguez has served as Maduro's vice president since 2018, overseeing much of Venezuela's oil-dependent economy and its intelligence service, and was next in the presidential line of succession between 2014 and 2017. She served as the country's foreign minister. While Donald Trump has railed against the Maduro regime since its first term as U.S. president, Rodriguez is part of a band of senior officials in Maduro's administration that now appear to control Venezuela, with Trump appearing to rule out an immediate role for the country's conservative political opposition figures. So this was about allegedly drugs and allegedly liberating Venezuela, and Venezuelans, and all that kind of stuff. But they kidnapped or seized the two leaders, and it's still the same government, however. It's still the same overall regime, just a different leader in the interim. It seems the United States may not be interested in doing the rest of the work that would be required to actually liberate the Venezuelans, if that's indeed what it was. Hmm. Interesting. So yeah. Um, I know. I know. It's interesting. Ay, 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 ay. So basically, her rise to become interim leader of the South American country came as a surprise on Saturday morning when Trump announced that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had been in communication with Rodríguez. Rubio said Rodríguez was someone the administration could work with, unlike Maduro. Trump said the U.S. would run Venezuela temporarily, but Rubio clarified on Sunday that it would not govern the country day to day, other than enforcing an existing oil quarantine. They can't even decide among themselves what it is that it's going to be. It's too early to say if Rodriguez will pursue a rapprochement with Trump administration or follow the same adversarial line as her predecessor. On Saturday, she demanded that the U.S. return Maduro and called the U.S. government extremists. Quote, "What is being done to Venezuela is an atrocity that violates international law," Rodriguez said, surrounded by high-ranking civilian officials and military leaders. On Sunday, she struck a more conciliatory tone in a social media post. Quote, "We invite the U.S. government to collaborate with us on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law to strengthen lasting community coexistence." Wow. On Saturday, the U.S. government were extremists, and on Sunday, uh, they were a potential uh, partner for collaboration on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law. Wonder what happened between Saturday and Sunday. Trump was less conciliatory in an interview with The Atlantic magazine, calling on Rodriguez to provide total access to her country or face consequences. The U.S. president wants Venezuela to open up its oil industry and stop drug trafficking, even as most international drug experts consider a handful of its South American neighbors as much more heavily involved in cocaine production. Quote, "If she doesn't do what's right, she's going to have to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro," Trump was quoted as saying in the telephone interview over the weekend with The Atlantic. "Do what I say or we'll kidnap you too. And what will happen to you might be worse than what we got planned for this guy. And you know how much we don't like this guy." Just providing a little positive encouragement, right? Ugh. Jeff Ramsey, a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, a Washington, D.C. research institute, said that Rodriguez's initially firm tone with the Trump administration may have been an attempt to save face. Quote, "She can't exactly expect to score points with her revolutionary peers if she presents herself as a patsy for U.S. interests," Ramsey said. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Venezuela's constitution requires an election within 30 days whenever the president becomes permanently unavailable to serve. Reasons listed include death, resignation, removal from office, or abandonment of duties as declared by the National Assembly. The electoral timeline was rigorously followed when Chavez died of cancer in 2013. However, the Loyalist Supreme Court, in its decision on Saturday, cited another provision of the charter in declaring Maduro's absence a temporary one. In such a scenario, there's no election requirement. Instead, the vice president, an unelected position, takes over for up to 90 days, a period that can be extended to 6 months with a vote by the National Assembly. In handing temporary power to Rodriguez, the Supreme Court made no mention of the 180-day time limit, leading some to speculate she could try to remain in power. Trump on Saturday dismissed the idea of opposition leader and most recent Nobel Peace Prize winner let's try that again. Maria Corina Machado taking over, saying she lacked support in Venezuela. Trump did not elaborate on how he came to that conclusion. Um, Machado was banned from the 2024 election, but her ally Edmundo Gonzalez was believed to have accumulated more votes than Maduro in that contest. Prime Minister Mark Carney, in a statement on the weekend, highlighted the long-held position of liberal governments that Maduro was an illegitimate leader. Inside Venezuela, according to reports, Maduro opponents have kept celebrations on hold as his senior loyalists remain in power, and there's no overt sign of the military turning against them. On the streets, Venezuelans have reportedly been stocking up on food and medicines in case of instability. And yeah, oh boy, like I said, it's a bit of a mess down there. It's a bit of a mess, and not only there, but it seems it's a mess within the United States too, because they're not quite sure what it is that they're going to do next, and it's not going to be just a 2 or 3 week thing, right? It's going to take a long time to rebuild that infrastructure. Uh, it might not even start delivering anything that Trump wants until Trump is long out of office. Um, moving on. Ontario Premier Doug Ford got a little bit of bad news yesterday. I'm sure, I don't know what the Ontario Premier's equivalent of throwing ketchup against the wall is. See what I did there? But whatever it was, a Tim Hortons smile cookie. Yes, he probably threw a Tim Hortons smile cookie or a cherry cheesecake against the wall yesterday, because according to Isaac Callan and Colin DeMello of Global News, a panel of 3 judges has thrown out an attempt by the province to stop the release of government calls on Premier Doug Ford's personal cell phone, agreeing with Ontario's transparency watchdog that they should be made public. More than 3 years ago, 3 years ago, Global News filed a Freedom of Information request seeking access to government-related calls on Ford's personal phone, a number he regularly publicizes while his official device is unused. The request was denied by the government. Global News appealed the decision to the Information and Privacy Commission. At the tail end of 2024, the Information and Privacy Commission, or IPC, issued 2 rulings siding with the Global News Freedom of Information request, and another similar appeal from an Ontario doctor seeking access to calls made on Ford's personal cell phone. The ruling concluded that some of the contents of the calls on logs on Ford's personal phone related to a department or government business matter, and told the government to begin preparing to release those calls. 3 years ago. The Ford government, however, filed a request for a judicial review, asking an Ontario court to overrule the IPC. Arguments in the judicial review were heard last month on December 10th. Lawyers for the Ontario government and Doug Ford himself said the landmark decision was a, quote, make-work project that entertained irrelevant and unreliable evidence. A lawyer representing the Ontario doctor and another for the IPC said the decision was correct, and allowing the Premier to shield his communications from transparency by using his personal phone would, quote, undermine democracy in the province. Less than 3 weeks after hearing the arguments, the panel of 3 Ontario judges batted away the government's request for a judicial review, denied, ruling the IPC's decision was correct and should stand. Quote, the conclusion that the Premier used his personal cell phone to conduct cabinet office matters is a finding of fact that attracts a high degree of deference, part of the decision read, released on December 29th. The inference that the Premier used his personal phone for government business was a reasonable inference from other proven facts and the totality of the evidence that was available to the adjudicator. The Premier's office said it is, quote, seeking leave to appeal the decision. He is fighting really, really, really hard to not give up those phone records, because that's what someone with nothing to hide would do. Of course, somebody with nothing to hide wouldn't have an actual government issue cell phone that has gone unused after how many years in power now? In their 16-page ruling, the panel of 3 Ontario judges disagreed with arguments from the government and the legal team representing Ford personally. The decision emphasized the importance of freedom of information laws to ensure transparency and accountability, cautioning against ways in which politicians could change how they communicate to avoid scrutiny. I mean, there is no reason to use your personal phone for government business other than wanting to avoid scrutiny. There is no reason whatsoever. Quote, it is now widely accepted that access to government information laws are vital tools of democratic practice, contributing to transparency, accountability, and meaningful participation in a public debate and political decision-making, the panel wrote. The decisions raise the important question of whether shielding phone logs from a personal cell phone that relate to departmental matters from public access would undermine the purposes of the FIPPA. So, again, when you're using computer software to do chats that are avoid government email, when you use your personal phone, the core principle here is that when you're an elected official, everything that you do in the name of the jurisdiction that you are in government and in the name of the people who live there, that belongs to the people who live there. Those are our records, not his. Our records. And they need to be someplace where we can access them. And if they are on their phone, or if they're on a signal chat or something that cannot be accessed, there is no reason to communicate via methods other than the ones that are specifically prescribed for the purpose of doing government business that are legitimate. There are none. So the very act of making the choice to not use the government issued and government approved methods of communication would indicate that someone wants to avoid scrutiny. And then the reasons for this, which are theirs alone to know for the moment, but should also be known to us. Well, hopefully they might soon be revealed. Ford's lawyers had argued accessing the personal phone records would be an invasion of privacy. No, honey, no. If they were accessing your personal phone calls to, let's say, your wife, your children, your friends, yeah, possibly, unless there was a warrant for that. But when you are doing business through a communications device on which you have private conversations and use that then to say, well, hey, you'll be invading my privacy. You'll see who else I've been talking to. Yeah. And maybe that's why you chose to do government business on that phone, so that you can use that argument thinking that that would shield you. Well, it seems that it doesn't. They said there had, quote, never been an order such as this from the IPC, arguing the data in the call logs would not offer any information in the public interest, but would instead invite speculation, gossip, and innuendo and be a springboard for misinformation. Well, whose fault is that? That's your fault from having used that device. You opened yourself up. You're the ones that issued the invitation with an RSP for that speculation, gossip, and innuendo. You're the ones that set up that springboard for misinformation that you fear by not using the government issued sources. You cannot refuse to use the government sources and then turn around and say, oh my God, well, now that we didn't use the government sources and you wanted to know what we used other sources for, well, that could invite speculation, gossip, and innuendo. Well, if you didn't want that to happen, then you shouldn't have used another source. I just, it's like, I don't understand the logic, the complete lack of self-awareness. It's that would be like me walking out on the street with no clothes on, somebody mocking me because it's winter uh, uh, for shrinkage, and me complaining that they're mocking me. It's like, I'm the one that chose to go out without any clothes on. What did I think would happen? That nobody would say anything, that nobody would notice? Really? It's- you create the situation that creates the problem, and then you complain about there might be a problem. You needed to make better choices. That's all on you. I'm sorry, that sounds like a you problem. The judges disagreed, saying the IPC's 2024 decision had established a coherent and rational connection between the evidence presented and the conclusion Ford uses his personal phone for government business. The decisions are transparent, intelligible, and justified, the judge's ruling said. There is no basis on which this court should intervene. The panel pointed out Ford had chosen not to submit an affidavit swearing he does not use his personal phone for government business, a relatively common practice in IPC appeals. Okay, the guy does not even want to say, said, you can't search my phone because that's an invasion of privacy. Okay, then fine, sign this affidavit that states legally, under penalty of perjury, that you do not use your private phone for government business. Oh, I don't want to sign that. And then you think that there's not going to be a big neon light sign flashing towards you. Suspicious, suspicious, suspicious. Quote, in many of the other IPC cases cited by the IG and the Premier, the government respondent submitted an affidavit, the decision said. The Premier was not required to submit an affidavit, but he clearly knew the case to meet. During the appeal and the judicial review, representatives of the government and the premier argued it would be impossible and unreasonable to go through years-old calls log to work out who Ford may have spoken to in previous years. Oh, yes, so impossible and unreasonable, and yet it can still be done. And yes, we can, you know what, if you made so many damn calls that we just need to hire extra staff to do that, I think that's a sacrifice we're willing to make, Mr. Ford. Jeez. Ford's lawyer, Gavin Teague, said it would be a make-work project for the premier that would sideline him from governing the province for weeks. The guy who sat 52 days, was it, or 59 days, all last year in the legislature, I think he has plenty of time for a make-work project, I would say. It's not like he's that busy in the legislature actually legislating, which is the job we elected him to do. Oh no, please don't make me hand up my phone. That's going to cause too much work for me. I will not be able to focus on governing. Oh my. Wait, how many days did I govern last year? Legislate 59. No, don't look at that. No, it was just, oh my God. We're literally at the say anything stage here. Paul Champ, who represented Ontario Dr. Brooke Fallis and argued against the judicial review, said accepting personal cell phone use by Ford frustrates the very purpose of freedom of information laws. Duh. Regardless of how onerous a task sorting his calls might be, Champ said the premier had brought about the situation by carelessly mixing the two. He suggested the appeal and its questions would have been avoided if the premier had maintained an active government and personal device. Okay, the lawyer. See, I didn't even get to this part in the article, and I already made the legal argument that the lawyer is saying here. I have no law degree. And this is so, the legal case here is so obvious. And the Ford government actually wasted our time, our resources, and our tax dollars trying to make this legal case that someone who has never... I can't say I've never studied law. I took the 2 years law that were offered in high school, and I did try to take a first year law course as an option when I was in university. And I actually dropped the course after 3 weeks because for some it was tort law, and apparently I was wrong on everything pretty much. But my sense of justice was looking at, who was right or wrong. And who had been cheated or in some way, and was going towards them in order to fix the injustice. But it was like, no, so you're trying to fix the injustice, which is very nice and noble, but you have to do it according to the law. And the law says that, well, the case actually goes the other way, even though there is an injustice, because there's either a burden of proof or a process or something that is followed in a certain way. Like this, or more benefit of the doubt or whatnot. But it's so obvious you got screwed. Yeah, but you got to be able to prove that, right? According to these guidelines. And if you can't, well then, right? So I figured that a career in law probably wasn't for me because my instincts weren't great. So if someone like me could look at this and say, well, yeah, here's the legal basis that doesn't make sense logically in terms of just as a legal argument, and then, well, the lawyer that is actually won the case says that's exactly it. So if that is so obvious to me, that indicates just what a waste of our resources this is, and how desperate an attempt this was to avoid transparency. So let me read that again, right? You can't touch on my phone. It's an invasion of privacy. And we can't get everybody to go through all those logs from all those years. It would be so much work. Regardless of how onerous a task sorting his calls might be, the premier brought about this situation by carefully mixing the two. This appeal and all the questions could have been avoided if you, premier, had maintained an active government and personal device. Boom. Champ said Ford chose to use his personal phone for all facets of his communication, either deliberately or recklessly. The ruling from the panel of judges appeared to agree with Champ. Quote, the work required to identify the government business in the call logs would not impair effective government, the judges wrote. This is no different when an institution is required to search voluminous records to find records that are responsive to a request. This work would not have been necessary if the premier used his government phone. Boom. The premier's office did not address questions from Global News asking if Ford had begun using his official phone for government calls. I bet he did. Guy wouldn't even sign an affidavit. He's certainly not going to answer questions from the media. And does anybody really think that Ford has started to begin to use his official phone for government calls yet? Anybody? Anybody at all out there? I'm looking for a hand. Anybody pipe up? Not all at once now. No. The crickets seem to think so, but nobody else. Oh, please listen. I'm not a particularly religious man, but all the deities that are out there, I don't care which religion, I don't care what spiritual belief, all of them. If you are out there, it's like my Russia, if you're listening. Deities, if you're listening. Please, 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 let this finally be the moment where this. I'm trying not to swear early in the year, so I just mouthed it. But this effer, finally has to face some accountability. It's corruption by the bucket load with this guy. Again, for legal reasons, it looks like corruption by the bucket load with this guy, just over and over and over again. And he is in power for how long now? Are we closing in on 8 years? And not even close to anything. Okay. Close to 6 years, I guess. Is it 6, 8? Yeah, 8 years, close to 8 years. All the stuff, and nothing has come remotely close to sticking. Ugh. How this man avoids all responsibility. Come and tell me that this guy is just not another version of Trump. At least when it comes to the business dealing side. It's just, and the same thing, the sort of like plain speak. He speaks like the people. The strategies and the MOs are so similar. It's just the only thing I don't see is Doug Ford trying to do, international moves in such a way as to destabilize his own jurisdiction or his own country. But when it comes to the money and the backslapping and the backroom dealing and the wanting to avoid transparency and the geez, oh shucks type stuff, and there's not a lot of difference between the two. So some accountability would be welcome, finally, for this man. Fingers crossed. Maybe we will start to finally get some. All right. One more thing before we need to go, specifically, at least that we had on the list today, as it would seem, we are supposed to believe, that a CPC MP has experienced the Liberal government engaging in some extraordinary efforts to get him to cross the floor. Now, for now, I'm going to say claims. Um, this particular version of the Conservative Party of Canada tends to, what's the word, lie and manufacture things. They like to say things and not actually have much proof of that. So, according to the Canadian press, a British Columbia member of Parliament says he's been approached across the floor to give Mark Carney's Liberal government a majority, but he's not interested in, quote, betraying his constituents. Scott Anderson, MP from Vernon Lake County, Monashee, says in a post on social media that the Liberals are, quote, pulling out all the stops to lure Conservatives. His exact words. Okay. That is not working very well. The article was supposed to link to a Facebook post of his in which he makes his claims, his full statement. So let's see whether or not we can find his statement on his Facebook feed by going there directly. And there it is, top of it. Oh my, yeah, he had a lot to say. Okay. It's important for my constituents to know that actually, let me read that in the voice that I assume it was made in, and I could be wrong, but it's important for my constituents to know that I, like others, have been approached by the Liberals and asked to cross the floor to join them. The Liberal Party of Canada is pulling out all the stops to lure Conservative members of Parliament to cross the floor so they can have a majority and subject Canada to more years of economic and social malaise. With the complicity of the MSM, they've promoted the myth that there's some kind of movement to turf our leader, and it's because they're afraid of Pierre Poilievre. They'd prefer a milquetoast Conservative leader, not a fighter who stands up to their lies and omissions. Is that okay? Did I do that right? Yeah? Okay. Did that feel good? Yeah? Okay. Gee. Lips to butt pressed firmly. To the Liberals who initiated this contact, let me say this. Your headlines scream about great nation-building projects, yet almost a year after getting parliamentary approval, there are no pipelines, no new mines, no new energy corridor, not one formal trade deal. Actually, we do have a deal with Indonesia. We also have a deal with Ecuador, but those are formalized trade deals. We also have the whole safe agreement with Europe, and we have started on other deals. Of course, deals take time, but we are starting on negotiations with the ASEAN bloc and Thailand and the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken. And we are talking also with India and China, if I'm not mistaken. And then there were all the other deals like the over the horizon stuff with Australia. And we're doing things. These claims are not true, but anyway, let's just keep going. And of course, there's no approval of a pipeline. Yes, because no pipeline has actually been proposed yet. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure how Conservatives expect Mark Carney to approve something that has not yet even been proposed. But there you go. No new mines. Well, yeah, no new mines, but there were a couple of mines that did get tapped under the Build Canada initiative, right? There are 2 copper mines, and wasn't there a nickel mine recently announced in the second bunch? No energy corridor. Isn't that whole pathways MOU things the starting of that? If the Alberta interties with what's going on everywhere out in the West, isn't that the beginning of an energy corridor of some kind, especially if we add the Nova Scotia wind project going on? It seems that there's stuff that has started there. Indeed, you haven't even bothered presenting plans. Oh, this is rich. This is rich. Oh my God, this ties into exactly what's going to come next. You haven't even been bothered in presenting plans because buried in the subtext below every headline are caveats that ensure nothing will ever be done. Simply put, you've done nothing but make empty promises, increase taxation, and throw billions away trying to entrench your power. What are you going to try to bribe the next Conservative MP with? Sir, why don't you mention We're talking about the Liberal Party bribing people, and you're talking about them pulling all the stops to lure you. This would be a perfect opportunity in the text to say, for example, while they were trying to lure me, they bribed me with this, this, and this. But um, that's not there. Interesting. Interesting claiming that people are being bribed, claiming that you yourself were lured, yet you do not take advantage of this opportunity to really embarrass the liberals by blowing up their game, by telling the whole world, the whole nation, what it is that they offered you as a bribe. I'm getting sure Jan vibes from this. If broken promises were the only issue, it would be bad enough, but I sit across from you every day and see what most Canadians can't see when they watch CPAC. I watch you laugh when we Conservatives bring up the closed mills, the shuttered businesses, the seniors who have to choose between eating and rent, and I'm sure you would all be a chorus of choir boys if we had the cameras turned on you. Mm. Complaining about others for what it is they themselves do. They also did get a pipeline to Tidewater built. They had 10 years. Remember? The most pro oil government in Canadian history, so much that they gutted every environmental law possible in order to do that. With a very pro oil government in Alberta, and they couldn't get an single inch. TMX and Coastal up north there, where the gas is going through to Asia for the first time, those are both liberal initiatives. The TMX deal was liberals with the 4 years that the NDP were leading in Alberta. The party who can't lay pipe complains that the party current in government hasn't approved a pipeline within a year when there is no plan or proposal for an actual pipeline to be approved. And then says, oh my God, your behavior in the House when the cameras aren't on is so atrocious when it's a freaking frat house on their side. You can't take this seriously. I watch you laugh when we Conservatives bring up the closed mills, the shuttered businesses, the seniors who have to choose between eating and rent. I watch your self satisfied scoffs when we ask you to cut taxes and allow Canadians to flourish again. I see you sitting across the aisle in designer suits paid for by a job that's inflation proof and safe, smirking at those who have to try to scrape a living out of the economic desert you created because, yeah, you, sir, are not also. In a job that's inflation proof and safe. And if you choose not to spend your money on designer suits because, well, that is your fashion sense. So, like, this is the junior high from which no one ever graduates. Ever. 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 Again, this is not a government in waiting. Oh my God. I watch you boast about your handouts, your rental housing that never seems to materialize, your leader who shows up a few minutes a month for part of the QP before jetting off in search of more pointless headlines. Again, the search for pointless headlines, a hallmark of the Conservative Party of Canada. And you have the gall to say that our pleading for the little guy is carping. I'm frankly disgusted. So, no, I won't join your party. I have no intention of crossing the floor today, tomorrow, or ever, regardless of what you offer me. It would be a betrayal of my constituents, a betrayal of the office to which I've been elected, and a betrayal of my own personal core beliefs, because none of the stuff that you've written is not a betrayal to any of that. Just saying, okay, just maybe it's just me. If it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever consider betraying my constituents, and you should probably stop asking because I certainly will advertise it every time you try. Melodramatic much. So basically, um, he said, no proof, no dates, no meetings. On December 21st at 7:06, it's in my phone log, I received a call from X and X person from the Liberal Party asking me to having this conversation, asking this on such and such a day. Yeah, here's the email of this. On this day, we met over coffee, and there was three people in the room. Right when Chris Dautremont mentioned about Chris Workerton, the Conservative whip, and Andrew Scheer barging into his office. He had a date, he had a time. He could report what was said during the conversations, whatnot, which forced the conservatives to put out this whole other narrative. We calmly and calmly walked into his office. We sat down and quietly explained to him, it's like, none of these things sound like Andrew Scheer and Chris Workerton, especially if you check out their Twitter feeds and look at any video of them speaking. Calm, reasonable. D'Entremont had dates, times, could relate to conversations. This guy basically says he was approached, and that's it. The rest of this is just anti-liberal bashing, having nothing to do. So, Conservative MP stands up and says, "I will never leave my party or betray my constituents." Based on nothing tangible that he put out there, just saying things, and expects us to take that seriously. And then, of course, all the other conservative MPs and pundits in the machine. It's like, there you go. That's how you do it. That's how you stand up for like this. And of course, make sure right in the first paragraph, though, because this is really what it's all about here. Right? With the complicity of the mainstream media, they've promoted the myth that there's some kind of movement to turf our leader, and it's because they're afraid of Pierre Poilievre. They'd prefer a milquetoast conservative leader, not a fighter who stand-ups to their lies and omissions. All of this is, Pierre's not in trouble. Pierre's not in trouble. No, not especially after making that very ill-advised comment celebrating Trump and basically licking his colon clean with his tongue. But no, Pierre's not in trouble. Nobody's going to be leaving this party. Certainly not me. I'm not the one that's going to be leaving as a result of him having said that. No, not me. They're just out to get us. That guy in that designer suit who hasn't built a pipeline yet. Who has an inflation-proof salary like mine. And he hurts my fifis when he laughs at me and mocks me in the House of Commons when I say stupid shit. I'm going to make a big public spectacle of saying, no, I will not join your party. And if you ever try to lure me again, I'm going to denounce it again by not sharing any critical information that would prove that you ever actually even knew I existed before I claimed you tried to lure me. Girl, you are bad at this. You are bad at this. Oh my God. Kid Linda, I wonder if they think he's in trouble with his leadership review and that this is where it's coming from. Well, that's what I'm thinking too, right? It's like I said yesterday, right? Those delegates were picked long before, and he put his thumb on the scale and all of that kind of stuff. And, but since then, he has just been making ill-advised statement after ill-advised statement over and over again and just proving that he is not the one, he is not the guy. And this latest move, again, I truly and honestly believe that it is statistically impossible with the 130 or so odd CPC members that are currently sitting in the House of Commons, that there aren't at least, and I am being very conservative in my number, 5% of that caucus, 5% among those 130 so CPC members who still remain. This 5%, who might think, yeah, celebrating the actions of a guy who unilaterally went into another country in order to seize their leader, bring him to his own country, and then claim that he is going to uh, just take the oil is um, an issue that is a position that all of those conservative MPs, even just 5%, would be down with. I really have a problem believing that. I'm seeing here 142 conservative MPs. So 5% of those, about seven. Surely there's 7 among 142 who were not impressed with Pierre on that, who are conservative in terms of economic leanings or whatnot, but not so much on the frat house part and not so much on getting belly down, ass up, no lube to lick Trump's boots the way Pierre has. Surely there must be 7 out of 142. Statistically, they can't all be in the bag for this. And being rather aware that this was probably a really dumb move are, again, more preemptive framing, running interference and doing damage control before someone leaves, putting that out there, right? So when the next one leaves, oh my God, look at those liberals. They did it. What they did to me. They tried to lure me. They did to that guy. That's the only way they got them, because nobody would want to leave Pierre's party on their own, right? There's no reason whatsoever, because it's just a festival of joy and mutual support in that party, right? Everybody's just free to speak their minds and going about doing their job in the best interests of the constituents. Try to apply for some housing accelerated funding. See how that works for you, or public transit money. No. Everything must be directed to ensuring that the leader remains vertical. It's so over the top, it can't be believed. If you want to pull this type of thing, if you've got nothing, is you claim that you were lured. As you say, yeah, over the past days, I've been approached by one or two people, or many people, depending on how it is that you want to spend it, but one or two people who have quietly tried to make the case that I should come over. But you know what? I like my party, and I really believe in what we stand for, because we have this to offer, and we have this to offer, and we have that to offer. And, my constituents deserve these types of things. And so I politely declined. But this whole melodramatic screed, complaining about his designer suits and being mocked, when it's like, you're bringing the mocking upon yourself. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Wow. So apparently, just say it is so, and then let the party do the rest. Again, very Trumpian, right? Just say the election was stolen and leave the rest to me. Just say that. Just say that Joe Biden did something incorrect in Ukraine and leave the rest to us. Zelensky wouldn't. Just say Bart Carney and the liberals are pulling out all the stops to lure me to the party. And let us do the rest. I'm sorry. It is so bad. It is so. This is not. how you do this kind of stuff. They are terrible at this. They are terrible at this. And of course, here we go. Um, uh, One of the usual suspects here, just to give you an example, because again, the guy makes the statement offering no proof whatsoever, no proof, doesn't say who, doesn't say when, has no phone call logs, no email logs, no nothing, just goes out and claims it. So here, um, let's see if I can make this larger for you and I can actually show it. There we go. And let's put it on the page. And again, and the Facebook one was a long screed. The Twitter one was even uh, um, more tersely worded, I would say. There was a post by trendinpolitics.ca. Breaking: Scott Anderson says liberals are trying to flip MPs, including him. His response: it'll be a cold day in hell before I betray my constituents. Scott Anderson tweets it. I have no intention of crossing the floor today, tomorrow, or ever with a Canadian flag and a blue heart emoji. To which Carrie Diot, who is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Edmonton Griesbach, who we talked about yesterday, actually, who had was attacking John Ivison, insisting that he might, along with the rest of Conservatives, insisting that John Ivison of all people, might be a liberal shill. Yeah, well, I'll let that one land for a bit. Kudos for telling Carney's would-be poaching liberals to take a hike. Yeah. Let's amplify it. Let's amplify this thing. Woo! Let's run with it. Yeah. Such strong resistance to Carney. Woo! It's there's no proof. It seems to be entirely made up there. Yes, Kitaviji. We all have that one imaginary friend, don't we? Maybe he was talking to Brienne from Chilliwack or Mustafa, if those remember that. Those two. Huh? Yeah. Oh my God. They are so bad at this. This is so childish. Puerile. As they are complaining about Christopher Freeland not doing any work because she's already on the job in the other place. And oh my God, we can't be paying her for that. While Matt Jerneru hasn't shown up for a vote in God knows how long. And Damian Carrick wasn't in the House for a long time too before he officially stepped down. Again, everything that these people say they have a problem with, they don't actually have a problem with that now, do they? Because they do it. Mocking us when the cameras are not on you on CPAC. Oh, really? Yeah, you have a problem with mocking people when the cameras are not on you. Yeah. Mm. Oh my God. Okay. Wow. That is terrible. If this is the best they've got, that's frightening. If this is the best they've got, what have they got? Now, in that critique, there's a critique of a lack of plans. Pierre Poilievre, I guess, issued something claiming that he's plan. Change in oil-rich Venezuela means Canada must raise pipeline to the Pacific coast and move millions of barrels of Canadian oil per day overseas to break our dependence on one customer. Read my plain letter in a letter to the Prime Minister. Read my plan. Plain is probably right. Read my plan in a letter to the Prime Minister. How much do you want to bet that the basic elements of a plan are not in there? Prime Minister, recent events in Venezuela have altered the global energy landscape. Canada has rightly refused to recognize Nicolas Maduro's illegitimate regime, and I continue to support the Venezuelans' people's right to choose their own democratic future. But the removal of Maduro and possible end to American sanctions on Venezuelan oil could eventually displace some of Canada's oil exports and our biggest customer. And yet, you congratulated him on that. He congratulated him on that. Yesterday, Pierre knew that what he tried wasn't working. So all of this, like attempts to change the channel, right, from this terrible thing, very ill-advised statement that Pierre made. He had this other one yesterday. With all that is happening abroad, we need to Canada first. Last, weren't you literally just this past weekend putting Trump first? But now we need to go back to putting Canada first. Yet almost a year after becoming prime minister and promising to diversify markets, Mark Carney has not gotten a single country to reduce a single tariff on Canada. Oh, because last week, Pierre was only concerned about the fact that we didn't have a deal with the United States, but now we can't get a single country to reduce a single tariff on Canada. That's the accusation now. Escalating the accusation. There's a lot of flapping of the arms there, or flapping of the pigeon wings. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Stop talking about that dumb thing I said. Look at me, look at me. Instead, U.S. tariffs on Canada have doubled, and China and India have increased tariffs on our farmers and fish harvesters. He promised to be a master negotiator. It's all counterfeit. After hearing about a probably counterfeit or manufactured complaint of having of an MP attempted to having been lured. Every accusation is a confession with these people. With the U.S. potentially lifting sanctions, Venezuelan heavy crude production could rapidly rebound to historic levels, directly competing with Canada's very similar oil sands crude for limited and highly specialized U.S. refining capacity. Every barrel the United States sources from Venezuela could mean one less barrel these refineries would buy from Canada. We therefore need new markets to sell to, and we need them quickly. It's almost like Danielle Smith gave Pierre a call and said, "What the hell are you doing?" Wrote the letter for him and said, "You publish this under your name." Because I'm hearing Danielle Smith's voice here. I'm not hearing Pierre Poilievre. We need to move millions of barrels a day to overseas markets quickly to reduce our dependence on the U.S. market. That is why Canada must immediately approve a pipeline to the Pacific coast. There is no pipeline to approve, you dumbass. To date, you have not clearly stated that you support such a project. Your memorandum of understanding with the Premier of Alberta commits only to referring a potential pipeline to a new federal office for further consideration, meaning years of additional process, delay, and uncertainty. After nearly a decade of liberal obstruction, Canadians have no reason to trust that this leads to construction. Again, in that last decade, the Liberals bought TMX and got it built. After a decade of conservative leadership, there was not an inch of pipeline to Tidewater because the Conservatives just did not want to constitutionally deal with Indigenous people. And they still don't. They don't want a pipeline. They want the drama because they fundraise off the drama. Just like they didn't want the Triple E Senate. They wanted the drama so they can fundraise off the drama. If they wanted a Triple E Senate, there's a constitutional way to go about getting it. They didn't do it. It even went to the Supreme Court and they got slapped down by the Supreme Court saying, you can't do this way. The pipeline, you can't do this way, but if you would like to do it and get it done, this is what the process you need to proceed. And rather than taking that and saying, okay, we'll do that, Supreme Court. No, these activist judges, oh my God, they're holding us back. Send us money. They don't want the pipeline. They don't want the pipeline. So again, just like Trump. Trump doesn't want a deal. He wants the drama. Conservatives don't want the problems that they talk about solved. Because once they're solved, they can't fundraise them. And they're still pretending that TMX doesn't exist. Unbelievable. We do not have time for bureaucratic games or symbolic signing ceremonies. In 2016, your government canceled a nearly identical project in 2016. It was not Carney's government. A decision you later testified was the right one. Today, many Liberal members of Parliament still openly oppose a Pacific pipeline. The only way to prove this government is serious is to approve the project. There is no project to approve. Accordingly, there's no path, there is no route. Sorry, path is route, same thing. There's no route. There is no consultation with Indigenous people. There are no oil companies that have made a pledge to fill the pipeline. There is no project to approve. Accordingly, the official opposition is calling on your government to approve a new Pacific pipeline within 60 days of receiving Alberta's proposal. So Alberta just makes a proposal in 60 days, we approve it, that's all the consideration it needs. Is that before or after we've done the consultation? Because Alberta, I think, wants to have its final proposal in by July. We're January, and again, does anybody really believe that 6 months is enough time to obtain free, prior, and informed consent in a process that the people from whom we are seeking this consent would consider respectful and thorough? This is not a plan. Accordingly, the official opposition is calling on your government to approve a new Pacific pipeline within 60 days of receiving Alberta's proposal. After all, you were elected on a promise to build at speeds not seen in generations. This is your opportunity to prove it. The path forward is straightforward. Private capital is available. Skilled workers are available. The resource exists. The only missing ingredient is federal approval and a plan and a proponent and commitments to actually fill it and free, prior, and informed consent. Lots of other things missing. Courts have already confirmed that provinces cannot block interprovincial pipelines and that Indigenous consultation does not mean a veto. Under Canada's Constitution, legal authority for interprovincial pipelines rests only with the federal government, and under Bill C-5, the legal authority rests only with you. Yes, all that may be true, but if you actually want that pipeline built and not being stalled forever by either insurgency action or protest, if you don't want people to take action of that kind, you might want to spend more time at the front end seeking participation and doing consulting in a meaningful way that is respectful rather than just saying, present me a proposal, any proposal, and I will sign it within 60 days. And I don't care what anybody has to say. I'll just run roughshod over them because I have the power to do so. Because you have the power to do so doesn't mean you should do it. And because you have the power to do so, wielding that sledgehammer and bashing everyone into submission doesn't mean that everyone on that path is going to allow you to just do that. You will be tangled up in the courts. There will be environmental protest. There will be campaigns to humiliate and shame. You might even be inviting some actual eco-terrorism to happen. This type of stuff doesn't get you, in real life, a pipeline built any faster. He goes on. It is time for you to get out of the way. We have an MOU with Alberta, which creates at least a basic understanding for an actual proponent and a pipeline to actually exist. That is not only getting out of the way, it is giving a pretty major assist to creating conditions in which it could actually be possible. Doing so would relaunch Canada's resource economy and strengthen our economic sovereignty. Instead, liberal laws, taxes, permitting delays, and caps continue to block investment and derive capital elsewhere. Finger pointing will not fix this. Action will. As you know, I have proposed the Canadian Sovereignty Act. Gee, I wonder where you got that original idea. Came up with that all by yourself now, did you? Huh? Which would repeal growth blocking laws, and the industrial carbon tax, scrap the oil and gas cap, eliminate the EV mandate, lift the plastics ban, and incentivize reinvestment in Canada by removing capital gains taxes on reinvestments in Canada. Again, does any of this sound like it didn't come from the desk of Danielle Smith? Those 9 bad laws. The race has begun. Venezuela's re-entry into American markets means time is running out. It just happened. There isn't even a single dollar of reinvestment announced from the United States in yet. Yes, it is a situation that we need to be concerned about and be nimble and start to address rather quickly. But it's like, time is running out. Like, the clock hasn't started yet, dude. Somebody's about to start it, but it hasn't yet. So, like, chill the F out. Oh my God. Fear, fear, fear. Make a decision fast, fast, fast. Our sovereignty depends on your government getting out of the way of Canada's workers, builders, and investors so we can move again. Canadians do not need signing ceremony. He's repeating himself now. Meetings, memorandum, and paperwork, they need a green light. Conservatives stand ready to work with you in any party that is prepared for a government to stop stopping and start starting. Oh, we get another slogan. Stop stopping and start starting. Conservatives are ready to work for you to give us what we want. Oh my God, it is really hard. I'm trying not to swear this year as freely as I have been. But oh my God, I just want good Lord all up above. Man, is he dumb. It's like, I know the Lord apparently makes no mistakes, but they can't all turn out to be winners now, can they? Oh my word. This guy. Kids, don't be this guy. No, nobody likes this guy. That's why leaving his party. Oh my God, that was bad. That was so bad. That was so that. This is what passes for a plan. He called that a plan. Just get out of the way and approve anything that Alberta puts across your table within 60 days. I triple dog dare you. Na 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 na. Oh my God. And if you don't, you're a poopy head. Did we ever dodge a bullet? This guy is just, I guess I've been giggling quite hard myself. I just, Elaine, oh, my abs. Oh, I said, I know I should not be laughing in one way because, like, we are so poorly served. It is frightening. It is frightening. It is extremely concerning. I mean, ring the alarm. We are so poorly served here. We do not have an opposition party. We just don't. We certainly don't have one that's loyal, but we don't have an opposition party here. This is just, yes, Kitabi G, a big ol' wet fart of a man. I, wow. If they are committed to the bit. I will give them that. I will give them that. They are committed to the bit. You know, A plus for dedication, but F for any judgment or discernment. Any. Wow. I am. Kids and cubs. I think that's enough Daily Beaver for today. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate when you do, especially when you share a little bit that resonates about why it is our content resonates with you. That's advertising we cannot buy. It's priceless. So thank you for when you're doing that. It means the world to us and it helps us immensely. If you are looking to find all of our content in one place. Again, we're hoping to start work on the weekend. I hope to be able to learn from Mr. Grizzly how it is that we can get our audio version podcasts back up and running again. But we do have our pod page, Mr. Grizzly. I should probably go and check it myself because Mr. Grizzly assures to me that the video versions are there as well. So you can go there. Thanks to the Ray Girl, the pod page exists. And if you scan that QR code, it brings you there, podpage.com/the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click on subscribe, eventually when we get podcasts back on there, when they are fresh off the bandwidth, it will come directly to your podcast feed. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, Kits Elaine and Kits Cassie would certainly encourage you to grab your e-surfboard and hang 10 down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. Hey! And give our buttons a little click, like, share, and subscribe are waiting for you, and smash with them. It's smashing time, people. So get your freak on and give them a little click because that helps us with the algorithm. And we like that. And of course, it also helps with our numbers when it helps with the algorithm. And we like that too. So thank you for all of your help with that. And if you would like to help us financially, because we do incur some cost to bring the show to you, then we would welcome your enthusiastic expressions of encouragement to do more via the Emergency Hydration Fund at the Beaver Lodge, where every day we fight the scourge that is dry beaver. Keep your fever, beaver. Saturday Night Beaver. Keep your favorite beaver nice and moist by filling his cup with a little donation to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. Now I got my hair stuck in my hand. There you go. A little bit goes a long way. And if you are buying if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, instead of going through the coffee page, a direct transfer to True North. Let's try that again. True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com, our email address, ensures that your transaction remains 100% Canadian from your financial institution to ours. No money going to the US CE tech bros who then fund Donald Trump to do things like this kind of crap in Venezuela. I almost did it. Although I did say bullshit earlier, so you know. But yeah, we don't want to help fund that. So when you go through your Canadian institution and send us a donation with True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com, we get the share that would go to the US Tech Bros, which means that your beaver buck goes further and you get more bang for it. So more beaver for your buck going through direct transfer that way. If you are not able to contribute financially, because remember, we also have the super chat and the memberships on our YouTube page. But if you're not able to contribute financially, please use our email address to communicate with us what it is that you like about the show or some stories that you would like us to cover. Just send us some articles you think that we should see, suggest guests for our show, all of it. Show us what you're cooking. Hashtag #KitsWhoCook, either by email or put it on our feed. That's a little game that we have going on here, and we love it because one, it gives me ideas too, because I love to cook. So and sometimes you draw a blank. So if you have good ideas to share, tasty treats that you have made, please, please, please let me know. Or even if you just have some good news that you would like to share with us, because the news is often very doomy and gloomy. And we like to hear when good things happen to good people. And well, the damn fam has good people. So yeah, please let us know. We love to hear from you uh, on our socials at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. Also, which is our original home. We have the comment section down here on our YouTube page. We also have the Damn Fam Discord and the Instagram. And those are initiatives that are come from our audience, and we are very happy that they exist and that they love what we do enough to have some fan content out there too. If you haven't been to the Discord yet, I seriously think you should consider it once you're, just to go check it out, because it keeps the conversation going when the show is not there. And the Damn Fam is also a good place of support and encouragement. And, you don't only, that's not only accessible during the hours we do a live show. Or we have a broadcast that continues on, and that's all the initiative of the Damn Fam, because they're just damn good people. It's just that simple. All right. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, again, we have a petition, House of Commons petition number E6821, in order to encourage our MPs to introduce legislation that would make it such that Canadian media would be. And that is something that seems to be increasingly important. We are talking a lot about sovereignty, either in the Arctic, we're talking a lot about sovereignty, but we also need to be talking about media sovereignty as well. So if you think that that's a good idea, then please sign the petition. I have the link here, and we are now at 8,363 signatures. So again, it is starting to grow again now that we are back into a regular mode. Words of wisdom today. It's going to be similar to the ones I had for you yesterday. There's an onslaught of news, particularly with regard to this. Lots of doom, lots of various scenarios, lots of accusations. Take a breath and don't hold fast to any one narrative just yet. There has not been enough time. And as I mentioned, when this stuff happens, usually it's a 72 hours for sure before you start getting some real facts and stuff. But because of the overall size of this type of event, the magnitude of it, the scope, and the seismic shift that it could create if the worst were to happen, and the amount of time it would take to actually get some serious information about these types of things and things of these nature, we're looking at many much more than 72 hours, probably even maybe a week or two or more before we start seeing what the real deal is here is emerging. So like I said, take stuff in with, put it in the filing cabinet, but don't yet go, yep, that's it, that's the narrative, that's the thing, because there's a lot of people right now trying to work us and trying to get us to believe certain things, but the information to support it is not yet out there in the public domain, and information to support it that has been verified and comes from credible sources. It's not there yet. It doesn't exist, and not enough of it exists yet for us to have a firm grip, one way or the other, about what truly is going on here. Right? We have some initial things, right? The complete utter violation of international law in going to seize the Maduros is one thing that's pretty clear cut. But a lot of the other stuff, not so sure yet. So again, try. It's an online, it's an overall assault with the amount of news that we're being hit with. That is true, but just, and a lot of you want you to take positions fast and early. Remain skeptical, doubtful, and there is still not enough verified information out there in the public domain for anybody to be running with a narrative as if it is the narrative yet. So just a lot of, like I said, a lot of people want to pressure you into getting there fast. There is no rush on this. Okay, and this is something for which we should enjoy the luxury of taking our time, because the consequences of diving in way too quickly, um, they're larger than usual in this type of instance. This is not just our usual run of the mill stuff. This is big. So let's be cautious with and careful and considered in whom you place your trust at the moment. Right. And as we say on our show too, double check and verify everything we say. We're not expecting you to just take our word for it. All right. Okay. That's all I got for you today. It could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now may we have a little bit of audience participation, please? One. Oh, I have to tell you, please ask, say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. In 1, 2, and 3. Ooh, lovely, melodious, very patriotic, I have to say, as well. It sounded very patriotic. So I cannot deny the request. The damn fam has asked, and me, as your loyal queen, I must serve. I also slay, but I must serve. Here we go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit about Canadians who make us proud. Team Canada did defeat Team Finland for the bronze medal at the World Juniors. It's the first time in 3 years that Team Canada comes back with a medal. Not the one we had hoped for, but still a medal and improvement. Sweden won the whole thing, taking gold, and Czechia, of course, who eliminated us and sent us to the bronze medal match, took the silver. Also, a surprise defeat of Team Canada at the United Cup to the Belgians. Zizou Bergs was playing Felix Auger-Aliassime, and a very good player, I think still top 50 player in the world, but Auger-Aliassime was seemed to be hobbled by the heat and humidity and could not get the win. Victoria Mboko tried her best against Elise Mertens, who, even though Victoria Mboko is number 18th in the world, Elise Mertens was higher ranked. Mboko did win a set, but she lost 3-6, 6-3, 3-6. So it would have been up to the mixed doubles match. And if Canada had won that one, even though they would have lost the series, the best of 3 to Belgium, they still would have defeated Belgium in the standings by having one more match win in the division. But Felix Auger-Aliassime wasn't feeling well enough to play the match with Victoria Mboko, so she played with our number 1 ranked males doubles player, Cleve Harper, and they did put up a good fight, but did lose the match 10-5 in the deciding in the match decider, and therefore Canada, who is looking like a strong contender to win the United Cup, has actually been eliminated, sadly, and we've talked about the athletes of the year, male and female, has determined by the Canadian press, I think it is. And there's also an award for the team of the year. And I think no surprise to anyone here is that the Toronto Blue Jays won the award as team of the year, as chosen by the Canadian press. I would probably believe that the vote might have been unanimous on that one. Because, I mean, it was just such a wonderful story there. But let's see here if that is indeed the case. No, the team had 29 of 53 votes. 55% to finish well ahead of the women's curling team skipped by Rachel Homan, who had 10 votes. So it wasn't unanimous. The Canadian women's rugby team finished third with 5 votes. Canadian men's 4x100 melee team that won the Olympic gold at the Paris Games was named the CP Team of the Year in 2024, of course. But oh, wow. See, I thought it would have just been so obvious, but other teams that did really well got some credit too. So that's cool. It's the 6th time that the Blue Jays have been named the CP Team of the Year in the award's 59-year history. There you go. And that started, Canadian press started recognizing Team of the Year back in 1932, I think it was. Male and female athletes back in 1932, and a little later, I guess, for a Team of the Year. So yeah, there you go. It was interesting. Okay. See, I would have thought it would have been unanimous, but no, Team Holman got some votes. And like I said, the Canadian women's rugby team, who did have an amazing run there. So the love was spread around, and we like that. So that's all I got for you today. Amour et bisous. We will see you tomorrow, kids and cubs. Bye.